The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and there's exponential plant growth occurring in my backyard. It turns out we're not the only ones who enjoy spring. Warm weather and ample rain have fueled an explosion of growth, both terrestrially and aquatically, in my backyard pond. This week as I garden, let's take a look at the many types of wildlife that inhabit the average backyard. First come the invited guests, plants we purposefully cultivate to increase the aesthetic appeal of our yards. Like this Virginia creeper winding its way along my fence line. To make sure this Virginia creeper doesn't grow out of control and drag down my fence, I have to cut and prune it, snapping away to make it more manageable. Other plants like this ornamental grass need to be helped through some ugly growing pains. This grass seems to be afflicted with some sort of pathogen, though I can see what look like healthy green stems poking out from underneath. I decided to cut away the mottled, dead, and dying tissue to perhaps give this grass a better chance at regrowth. We'll see if this disease rears its ugly head again in the future. Speaking of rearing its ugly head, these beautiful flowers were positively infesting my backyard. The hard thing about pulling weeds is that some of them just look really pretty, especially under the microscope. These pollen-covered anthers looking like clusters of jewels. Microscopic yellow diamonds, a golden dragon's hoard on each and every flower. That's a bit overdramatic, but dandelions are definitely some of my favorite plants to look at under the microscope. Not so much once they go into their second phase, but still somewhat appealing aesthetically. Unfortunately, all the pretty sentimentality in the world won't save these plants from my merciless hands, stripping the earth bare like a grim reaper walking across the... this metaphor is falling apart. The second most common creature in my backyard was the insect, or other small invertebrates. While some of them met an unfortunate grisly end, enough survived slithering through the soil, winding their way through damp earth and plant roots. Tiny armored animals marching their way through a subterranean world. And creatures even more strange, far more fantastical, were still left to be discovered in the one area of my yard I had not yet cleaned, my backyard pond. Like these slithering serpents, either freshwater leeches or some other aquatic relative to the earthworm. Yes, indeed, this habitat is teeming full of life, which is why I'm taking huge handfuls of it, scraping it onto land, and packing it in plastic bags. Like a bulldozer dredging its way through a microscopic Great Barrier Reef. My top pond was the first to be affected by this devastating disaster, but my bottom pond wasn't going to get away scot-free, despite this cute-looking frog standing guard. Or these alien-looking gelatinous snails laying their eggs wherever a clear aquatic blade of grass or water lily can be found. Let's take a close look at this embryo. You can even see its beating heart. I suppose you could call this a snail fetus. A lot of snail fetuses. They breed really quickly and they're all over my pond. They literally cover my hands whenever I do this work. But those weren't the only small creatures inhabiting my pond. If you look at this dead leaf, you can see it encrusted with microscopic life. The smaller you go, the more interesting stuff you see. Is this just a strand of snot? Or is it a whole teeming colony of small ciliates feeding on even smaller creatures, these swarming bacteria? It's a huge ecosystem of all sorts of gross things right beneath the surface. And I'm tearing it out of the water and throwing it in plastic bags. Honestly, I feel a little bit bad, but it'll all just grow back, so what's the point in worrying, right? Plus, there are still more cool creatures that call my backyard home, or at least a rest stop, a sort of watering hole. Both wild animals and, apparently, domesticated pets. Seems my backyard is a hotspot for a host of medium-sized mammals. Perhaps this is a topic I'll explore more in the future. But first, I hope that cat gets its butt out of my face. It's kinda gross. It's amazing how much life you can find even in an average backyard. Honestly, it makes me feel a little bit bad for tearing it all up and throwing it in plastic bags. But hey, at least the yard's pretty, right? On that cynical note, guys, that's all for this week. If you want to check out more of my work, look at the link in this video or below in the video description. Regardless, keep your eyes peeled for another video coming along real soon.